Hello, so welcome to another reading vlog. We are coming up on midway through the month, and at the end of last week I was feeling quite behind on all the readathons that I'm trying to do. So I'm trying to do Becca's Bookopoly and I'm trying to do the Magical Readathon, as well as still trying to make progress on my own TBR and get down to TBR 0. And I was feeling really behind, but after a really good weekend of reading, I'm now feeling like things are pretty doable. So this week I'm going to focus on reading books that are related to movies. I am going to stretch it for the audiobooks I'm reading, but I can make an argument that they're related. So basically the two books that I'm going to try and read this week is Blindness by Jose Saramago, which is a book all about like everyone in the world suddenly starts going blind. And obviously this means that society really is struggling when everybody is blind. Basically everything falls apart. I've seen the movie before and I really loved it. It's got like Julianne Moore and Mark Ruffalo and some other people. And I really liked the movie. I've seen it a couple of times and I am excited to read the book. So then as well, I've got Mortal Engines by Philip Reeve. Not Reeves, just Reeve. There was a Peter Jackson movie based on this, and to be honest, I was a little bit disappointed in the movie, but it did have some cool ideas, so I'm interested to see what the book is like. Basically, it's like a dystopian world where all the cities are like movable and moving around on like giant wheels. I don't really remember much more to the story than that, but maybe once I get into reading the book I will. I haven't decided this week if after I read these I might try and rewatch the movies. To be honest, I didn't enjoy this one much, so I doubt I would. But this one, maybe. The other two things that I am going to be reading this week is a couple of audiobooks. So firstly, I have started reading The Echo Wife by Sarah Gailey. So this one, a lot of people talk about it. Basically, this woman's husband is having an affair with her clone and then they decide to kill him. I have gotten a little bit into the story so far, and that synopsis that I just gave is not entirely accurate, but I think it's best if you don't know the actual accurate events. In fact, I kind of suspect that you would enjoy this book a lot more if you went into it like not even knowing that it had clones in it, because the way it approaches it almost seems like it would be like a really cool surprise when you got to it if you didn't know it was coming. So I almost feel like I shouldn't have said that that's what the story is about, but then if you don't say that's what the story is about, then you can't even talk about the story, so I don't know. But anyway, I do think the tone of the story so far is very reminiscent of Magic for Liars by Sarah Gailey, which I also really enjoyed. So far I'm really enjoying it. Our main character is very bitter and twisted, but also fairly self-aware, which I'm quite enjoying. So I'm going to try and finish that. I'm going to go for a walk just after this and maybe see how much I can get through during that walk. I've got a few other things I want to do tonight, so I'm not sure how long my walk is going to be. The other audiobook that I will get to probably later in the week is The Passengers by John Mars. So this is like a Black Mirror-esque type thriller where there's all these different people in these self-driving cars, and the self-driving cars have been programmed to crash into each other, and then the public has to vote to try and decide which people in which cars are going to survive. I've heard really good things about this one, so I'm going to be reading that. And just to be clear, let's talk about my stretch. So how am I relating those last two to movies? Well, I feel like they would make really good movies. So I'm gonna listen to them and decide whether that's true. It's a stretch, but I'm making the stretch. And regardless, I'm hoping to really love all four of these books. Possibly I might get to more depending on how the week goes. Excuse me. But at this point, I'm feeling fairly positive about how much I can get through. We are also still in lockdown here in Auckland, so that means more reading time as well. Look at this guy interrupting me. He's up there. Oh, of course he flies away just as I get there. Little shit.
If you set yourself on fire, I never let you burn. I would smoke you till my lungs hurt.
Hello. So I feel like the lighting in this room always makes it look like I have dark circles under my eyes, which I probably do, but also not as bad as this makes it look. But I'm too lazy to find somewhere better lit. Anyway, yesterday I didn't update you guys because it was a do nothing kind of day where time just kind of disappeared and I didn't do any reading. However, I'm going to do my best to not let tonight be the same, even though I feel like by the time I finish work, I just don't want to do anything. But we're not going to do that. We're going to use our time effectively, which might mean doing relaxing things. It doesn't mean you have to be on all the time, but it does mean not just letting time pass and then feeling like everything sucks. So I have done some reading since I last talked to you. First, I have made some good progress on the Echo Wife. Hang on, how far through am I? So I've only got a couple of hours left to go, which I think puts me at like 80%-ish. I am really liking it. It's going in some interesting directions. In a lot of ways, it's kind of this woman trying to understand this clone of herself, except like it's a clone of herself. So in some ways, she's trying to understand herself through understanding the differences between the two of them. But there's some other interesting elements going on as well that I can't really talk about without being spoilers. But I'm just really enjoying it. Like it's probably more of like a character study rather than like a plot-based book, which isn't normally my thing. However, something about the tone of the way that Sarah Gailey writes just is something I really enjoy. So I'm going to try and finish that tonight, maybe. I'd go out for a walk and finish it, except it's raining, so I'm not. But maybe I'll do some housework and listen to it. That might be a good plan. The other thing that I did start is Blindness, although to be honest, I've only read one chapter. I will say that the writing is quite tiny. I thought this was quite a short book because it's only like 300 pages, but it's probably really 400 pages if this font was properly sized. But the first chapter, I feel like the tone of it is exactly what you get from the movie. So far it's fitting my expectations really well. Basically this guy was at the traffic lights and suddenly he goes blind. And the way it's telling the story is really focusing on like what you're losing when you lose your sight. And this other man takes advantage of him and steals his car. And because I know that this blindness is going to spread every time he interacts with someone, I'm like, are they gonna go blind too? So I definitely want to find some more time to read this tonight because I'm really enjoying the writing style. Although what I was interested in, because this is a translation, I'm wondering how much the translation has changed the tone of the writing, which unfortunately I'll probably never know because I'm unlikely to ever learn Portuguese. I mean, I'd like to learn a lot of languages, but Portuguese is probably not one of the top ones on the list. Regardless, I'm really loving this, so I'm definitely going to try and continue it tonight, as well as do some other things. I haven't really worked out what yet, but I will work that out. Am I making terrible decisions right now? Yes. Yes, I am. Oh, and just like that, it's Sunday night, and I have completely screwed up my weekly reading plans. I started out well, but then work got stressful, and on Friday night I thought, is there a game I could play on my iPad? And then I stumbled across the remastered version of Final Fantasy VIII, which is a game that I played when I was, I guess in my late teens. I'm not really sure when we got it. However, it's one of the first like big fantasy role-playing games that I played, and it's just so nostalgic, but it's also the kind of game that you can play many hours of. In fact, this weekend I think I've played about 25 hours of it. Have I done anything else? A couple of things, but not as much as I planned. I do think though, playing Final Fantasy, I really think like games of this time, you actually had to read a lot. In a lot of ways, you could see this game as kind of an interactive book. And I really think the story is one that a lot of people who like YA fantasy would enjoy. It's got like these teens who are learning to be mercenaries, and because of that they're getting all involved in the politics of the world. We've also got all this cool magic and these monsters all over the world that they're having to fight. As well, though, they are learning their connections to some of the stuff that's going on with the world, like personal connections, and just like the group dynamics and the characters and the friendships are really great. And I know that I'm just really nostalgic for it because it's from my teens, but I really think a lot of people would like it. The story. I think the gameplay, because it's so old, maybe wouldn't be for everyone, but I'm really enjoying my replay of it. At the moment, I'm at this part kind of, I think maybe, I don't know how far through. I guess I tend to think of the game as like 100 hours long, so maybe I'm like a quarter of the way through. I'm in the prison at the moment and I'm taking a bit of a break to play the card game that's part of the game. Anyway, I shouldn't spend my whole time talking about Final Fantasy. I did manage to do some reading since I last talked to you. So firstly, I finished listening to the audiobook of The Echo Wife, and I stand by what I said at the beginning of this vlog in that I thought it would make a good movie. I think actually as a movie it would be quite gruesome in some parts. There's some really yucky things that happen, but also it's just like a really good psychological thriller. I really enjoyed it. I think if you like Sarah Gailey's tone of writing, then you'll probably really like this. Then last night while I was playing Final Fantasy, I did actually put on the audiobook of The Passengers, and then I finished it because I just kept playing until like 3 in the morning. I did mean to give you an update in the middle of it, but that didn't happen. But anyway, I really liked The Passengers. Basically what's happened is there's like this secret court where there's hearings whenever a driverless car has a crash, and they're trying to make driverless cars like mandatory. So this hacker has hacked into a bunch of these driverless cars and set them up to collide, and is basically forcing them to choose one person to live, which obviously at the beginning everyone's like, we're not going to do it. He's like, well, if you won't do it, I'll just kill someone right now, and he does. So then they end up actually trying to decide who they will save. And it's a really interesting commentary about how do you judge whether someone's a good person. And kind of every single one of these passengers has kind of a story behind their life that could make them look like a good person or a bad person. And even if you hear the part of the story that makes them look like a bad person, then potentially there's more to the story which could explain it even further. So it's really looking at how you can make quite shallow judgments about a person's life, but if you actually get to know them, there's a lot more going on. So I like that message, and I like the way it was told. It wasn't like too heavy-handed, and like it was quite fast-paced and thrilling throughout the whole thing, while also being quite emotional, some of the different characters' stories that were told. Oh, also I would say that there is a couple of references in this book to The One by John Mars, so I would recommend reading The One first. So in The One, there's like this genetic test where you can find out who your soulmate is, and there's a couple of characters in The Passengers who have had that test. So it was really interesting seeing those two books being linked together. I would also say if you like The One, the tone of The Passengers is very similar, and it's a similar kind of setup, like looking at some kind of technology and how that would impact everyday people's lives. So I really liked that. Another thing that I have been really liking is Blindness. I did start this, I got a couple of chapters in, and it's so much like the movie in terms of tone and also just like everything that's happening so far. All these people who like interacted with each other and have spread this blindness are kind of in this mental hospital together where they've pretty much just been abandoned and they're having to look after themselves even though they're blind. So it's kind of quite horrific when you think about it, but also you can see it's coming from a place of fear because they really just don't understand how this blindness is being caused. There was a part in this actually where it talked about with an epidemic, how anyone who catches the disease is a victim and not to blame. And I think in a COVID world, that's a message that sometimes gets lost, although it is hard when people are actively doing things to spread the virus when they should know better. Whereas in this, of course, nobody knows how it's spreading. As well, none of the characters in this have names. They're just kind of referred to as like the doctor, the doctor's wife, the woman with sunglasses, the taxi driver, the policeman. Like they're just referred to, I guess, by their jobs mostly, but some of them don't have jobs, so they're referred to by other titles, like the boy with the squint. And the doctor's wife is thinking about how it makes sense because just at this point none of their names matter because they almost don't matter. It's really interesting the way that it's written. And I really do want to continue this, but I also just want to play Final Fantasy all night. I will try to get back to reading rather than just playing games. However, if I do play some more Final Fantasy tonight, I will try to listen to an audiobook at the same time. And since I finished The Passengers, what do I have? I don't want to listen. Actually, I did start listening to another audiobook. I started listening to The Midnight Library by Haig. I got this for free through my Audible subscription last month. I don't know how I feel about it. I have previously read The Humans by Haig, which also kind of addresses suicide as well. But it did it in a much better way. It was like a really funny book, but it's still kind of the suicide part of it and the way it addressed it felt very human. In The Midnight Library, we're basically following this girl who is really unhappy with her life. She's feeling very depressed, and so she is contemplating suicide. And right near the beginning of the book, she does commit suicide. And then she goes to this library where she's going to experience, I believe, all these different possible lives that she could have lived. And I imagine there'll be a great lesson in there that hopefully will lead her to believe that she shouldn't commit suicide. But massive trigger warnings for the way that this is written, because it just talks about killing yourself as like such a mundane thing. It almost makes it sound like just something that happens regularly, like it's not a big deal. I didn't really like the way it was written. I felt like even I get depressed sometimes, in fact probably depressed at the moment thanks to lockdown, but like suicide is never on the table for me, thank goodness. But even I felt triggered by the way that this was written. I don't like it. So for that reason, I stopped when we got up to the library bit, because I just wasn't having a good time. I don't know. So I might try and continue that, but I don't know. If it makes me feel more depressed, then I'm just going to stop reading it, I guess. Anyway, I can feel Final Fantasy calling me. Why haven't you played me for like 5 minutes? 10 minutes? I've been filming for 10 minutes? I definitely got to go back and play my game. Good morning. So, would you believe that it is Friday now? I honestly don't even know when I last updated this vlog. I really just have gone sideways. I lost the plot. But I think I am finally back in the real world. And I did actually manage to do a little bit of reading yesterday. So, admittedly, all I did was finish the chapter of Blindness, but I did really like it. We've got into kind of the first part where somebody dies, so that was exciting. I feel like it's going to get more intense from here, so hopefully tonight I'll be able to read some more of this. The other thing that I've been doing is listening to The Midnight Library. It's still not my favorite, but I guess it's getting better. One thing that's kind of annoying me is she keeps going to all these different lives, but when she gets there, she doesn't have any memories. So like, imagine trying to step into your life without any memories of all the things that are different from your other life. It's just really impossible. And the story does accept the fact, like one of the ones she just got to, she couldn't even find her house. But like, if you're really trying to test out these lives, wouldn't it help just to have a few basic memories, like who are these people? Like maybe she could see people and then all the memories would come back of them or something. I don't know. I guess I can see the way he wanted to do it as a discovery of this life, but it's just kind of really dumb trying to live a life that you don't know anything about. And I guess the other thing is that the lessons that this book is trying to teach, it's so heavy-handed in the lessons. And maybe for people who really don't understand those lessons, maybe heavy-handed is good. I don't know. Maybe some people enjoy this. I know some people enjoy this because this has had some good reviews, but so far I'm not feeling that engaged. Also, one of the lives that she gave up on, with just a small tweak, I think it could have been good, but we didn't go back and fix the regret that would just fix that one little thing. Oh, also at the moment, she's about to give like this public speech, even though she knows nothing about the life in which she would have been giving a public speech. So like, why doesn't she just pretend she's sick or something? I would never go forward with giving a public speech if you had no idea what had been planned or anything. I stopped listening at that point last night, but I feel like it's going to be a massive disaster. Anyway, I have a meeting momentarily, so I better get back to that. Hello, so today not going to plan already. I was already thinking that my productivity for this weekend was going to be down because Jace was going to come around. But then instead, my body has different ideas. So last night, just before I went to bed, I noticed I had this red mark on my thigh. Very similar to something I had like 2 years ago, which led me to spend several days in hospital. And I don't think the doctors ever worked out what it was, but it appears to be back. I drew a line around it last night and it is spreading, which is never what you want. So I guess today, instead of being productive and instead of seeing Jace, I'm gonna go to the A&E. I'm gonna take my book. To be honest, I was reading it a little bit last night and it was a bit boring. So I'm not sure if it's gonna be the best waiting room entertainment. I suspect I'm gonna spend a lot of time scrolling on my phone. Hopefully, with lockdown level 3, there'll be less people at the emergency room, but I'm not sure. So I guess we'll see.
Caught up in the web of my own fantasy, choking on the words that you said to me. Now I'm bathing in the aftermath, but I'm never going back. I'm never going back. Let your soul get too close to me. Yeah. Your heart is an ocean and I felt deep. Try to calm.
Hello, so I really hate this fringe and I wish it would disappear, as well as my roots, but that is not the point. Would you believe that it's Monday night? Basically, I went to the A&E and they gave me antibiotics. I didn't film while I was there because I didn't think people would appreciate being filmed in the A&E. I know I wouldn't have, but she said doesn't really make sense, same as the doctor said last time, but she felt reassured that it didn't make sense to other people either. So she just gave me some antibiotics and they do seem to be helping, but slowly, but it stopped getting worse and now it's starting to get better, which is good. For the rest of the weekend, Jace did come around, but we pretty much just relaxed. We did watch The Truman Show as well as 10 Cloverfield Lane, which went in quite an odd direction at the end. Oh, and the other thing we did manage to do is fix my laptop, sort of. So we've got it running again, but it's only running on High Sierra, which is a really old operating system. Like, it can't run iMovie, or at least the App Store won't let me even download iMovie. I did get Photoshop though, so maybe I could start doing my thumbnails with that Photoshop instead. I could try upgrading it, but I'm a little bit afraid it will die again. And I'm not sure, now that I've got LumaFusion on my iPad, I think I'll probably keep editing videos on my iPad anyway. So I'm kind of like in a rediscovery phase where I'm like, what do I even use a laptop for now? Kind of fun. Anyway, let me update you on my reading. I did manage to read a bunch of this last night. I want to try and finish it tonight, but that's not going to happen. But maybe by tomorrow I could finish it. I got through the bit yesterday where there was a bunch of rape and murder and horrible things happening in this mental asylum where all these blind people have been put. I do think the book was almost more brutal than the movie, but I need to watch the movie again to decide if that's true. But as well, it's just written in quite a factual way, which makes it, I think, seem more brutal. But then at the same time, it's written in quite a literary way, and it's kind of got all these like sidetracks and philosophical stuff kind of slotted in there. And that's really cool when it's philosophy or like ideas that you find really interesting. But when it's ideas that you find really boring, it can be a bit of a slog to get through. As well, like, I was reading some of it to Jason. He's like, what are all those long words? And I don't know. I'm really curious as to whether the original Portuguese book had things written in that same way and whether the translator has like translated that style across, or whether it's the translation style that's causing it to be written like this. I think it's probably the former. I did read right at the back of the book, it actually says the translator died before completing this, so it's not the best, is it? Anyway, the other thing that I have been doing is listening to the Midnight Library. I just went for a walk to the supermarket actually and listened to it during that walk. And I think I've only got a couple of hours to go. There was one part where I thought things might be going to get more interesting because there was this character that knew this thing. But in the end, that was only really short. I do think some of the lessons in this book are quite good, but I'm always frustrated by the fact that she's having to like improvise in these lives, and of course she's not going to fit into these lives if she's not part of these lives. Maybe that's going to be part of the lesson, I don't know. But I can't say that I've found it particularly uplifting yet. If anything, I found it kind of depressing. Maybe it's less depressing as we're getting on through the story. Anyway, I will try and finish that off tomorrow when I go for a walk. And then tomorrow it's going to be the 28th of September, so I've pretty much ruined my September TBR at this point. Although, considering how ambitious it was, I think I've done pretty well, so I'm not going to be too mad at myself considering everything else that's been going on. Anyway, I'm going to go and read some of this, do some video editing, and I don't know what else. Hello, so it is Wednesday night, but I did just managed to finish this. There were definitely parts of this that I struggled to get through. Like at the end, there was a whole part where they were in a church and all the eyes of the different paintings and sculptures around the church had been covered up, and that bit was a slog to get through. There was definitely a bit in the middle that was a slog to get through, but there were some parts I really like. I think once they left the mental asylum, there was quite a big section that really focused on the doctor's wife's loneliness because she's the only one who can see. And then right at the end, when everyone kind of regains their sight, kind of looped back to that. As well, there was an interesting bit where they kind of ran into this writer, which I wondered if it was a bit of like a self-insert, because he's kind of like, oh, you're the group whose story we should really be telling. Anyway, the writing in this is weird. There's no quotation marks on any of the speaking. It goes off on weird tangents, uses weird words sometimes, which I don't know if that's just the translation. It has all sorts of weird ideas in it, some of which I didn't 100% appreciate, but you know, it's being told by an old man, so, and I think it's from 1967, so you have to let some of that go. So, not a perfect book, but at the same time, I really love the story. I really love all the characters. And there's something about the feeling of this that I really loved. I will admit that if I hadn't read the movie, if I hadn't seen the movie, my experience with this might have been quite different. But regardless, I really enjoyed this. For the most part, except for the sloggy bits. Anyway, the other book that I have finished since I talked to you was The Midnight Library. And that one, like, it was fine. There were definitely bits that were quite boring. Again, there was like a whole chapter of just like one-line descriptions of all these different lives she lived, and wow, that was super boring. And I feel like in the end it kind of was saying, oh, in her old life things weren't as bad as she thought. You know, she didn't need to be so depressed. And like, that's fine, but what about all the people who are depressed and their lives actually are shit? Like, I don't know, it just kind of, I feel like the point of the book is to like make you feel more positive about life and see things in a brighter light, like there's hope for the future. But I don't think I got that out of this book. Like, it was fine, but it was also just like a very specific view of this is what makes life worth living, whereas I think what makes life worth living is different for everyone. So I don't know. I think some people will enjoy that book. I said this at the beginning, some people have enjoyed that book, but a lot of people have not as well. So it's an iffy one. Like I say, it was fine, but not what I was expecting when I first heard about it. Anyway, I guess that is going to be this vlog because I feel like it's been going on for quite a long time. Also, like, there's only 2 more days, 1 more day of September. I was going to try and finish off Model Engines, but I think I'm just going to put it back in the TBR because I'm not going to get to it. Maybe I've only got a small TBR for October, so maybe I'll get to it in October if things go super well. Anyway, do let me know if you have read any of the books that I talked about in this vlog, especially let me know if you've seen this movie. I think maybe a lot of people haven't seen it, which seems strange to me for some reason. Probably just because I assume everybody's seen every movie I've seen, because I hardly ever watch movies. Anyway, let me know if you've read any of these books or if you're interested in reading them. Otherwise, I thank you so much for watching. I hope that you are doing well, and I will see you next time.